Hello and welcome to the Alpha Anywhere demo and Q&A webcast. I'm Dave McCormick, VP of Product Management, and I'm pleased to be joined today by Dion McCormick, no relation, as well as Sarah Mitchell, who's head of our documentation department. Today, Dion is going to be giving a presentation and he's going to go back to basics, talking about workspaces and all kinds of great things. But we are here, all of us, to answer your questions. And you can type those questions into the questions box of the GoToWebinar control panel. So let's get started. Hello, Dion, are you there?
Yes, I am. How are you doing today there?
I'm doing well, and I see that you're sharing your screen. So it looks like you have all the AV stuff set up.
Yeah, I think we're in pretty good show. Let me know if there's any glitches or gotchas or anything like that.
Will do.
Well, thank you, everybody, to the end of summer, beginning of fall official program. And I say that because my girls just went to school today. So that's it. Summer's over. Everybody go back to work, do those two jobs that you are now able to do and collect two salaries. That's the hip thing right now, apparently. But thank you, everybody. We really do appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to join with us. And today we have a real fun presentation. It is a back to basics kind of conversation. And we hope that you'll find it intriguing. A few other little curveballs I'm going to throw in there to make it interesting to the old hands. But we are also here to answer your questions. So if you don't mind, if you have questions, you can do two things. One is first, just go to the questions area of your GoToWebinar control panel, enter in your questions. We have Sarah and Dave are with us, and they'll be monitoring those, and we'll try to get to as many of those as possible. But also, you can always send questions to guides@alphasoftware.com, and that is always a good place. It gives us good content. We try to do what we can to help you out there. So keep that on your list in terms of what potential, engaging with us and getting us questions that you would like answered. So before I jump into that, I just want to remind everybody, since it is getting to the end of summer and into fall, October is around the corner. Let's see, August, September. We only got a month, a little over a month and a half really till the DevCon 2021 is here. It's amazing. It's just around the corner. Actually, we got football starting at the end of this season. Or, it's going to be football, and then it's going to be right into DevCon. So it's all a very busy season. But take the time to go to the alphasoftware.com/DevCon 2021. Go ahead and copy that and sign up if you haven't already done that. If you have, thank you very much. We look forward to having you. We have a action-packed, end-to-end, just amazing event planned. A lot of great stuff that you're going to see. Peek under the covers, some new stuff, along with a lot of detailed information on existing capabilities and a lot of really good hands-on kind of activity that we're going to have during the training, during the account or the presentation. Along with that, we'll be recording it in high quality. We're doing it in 8K, I'm pretty sure. We're recording everything in 8K, so you're going to get these like petabyte files that are going to come down that have everything. No, it's not going to be that bad, but we are going to record everything in a very high definition quality so that if you can't attend every session during the day, you can just take a moment, because sometimes it's tough these days, and then you'll be able to review those. So we're really excited about this event. We've got a lot of really great content already ready to go, and we're adding more and tuning it up as we get closer to the event. So do go and sign up if you haven't done so already. With that, I'm going to go ahead and jump into my presentation. And again, if you have questions, go ahead and jump over on either what I'm talking about or other questions. Jump into the questions area, put your questions there. We will work to get those answered. So with that, we're going to talk about workspaces. Like when you set up a new project or a new set of projects within Alpha, what does that mean? What is going on? What is being created? And how can you leverage that to improve essentially your development capabilities? So this is a bit of a Alpha 101 kind of session, but a lot of really interesting things here. So the things we're going to kind of talk about is first, what is a workspace versus a project? We'll go through the step-by-step process there. We'll talk a little bit about where file locations are and information, where all these things are, so you can kind of get an idea of where those files are, some best practices that we've used, and also an extra bonus, the built-in workspace cloning feature, which I use enormously, and it's a very, very powerful feature, and we'll go ahead and show you a quick demonstration of that. So let's start out. first and foremost, there are really two, sometimes we kind of use them interchangeably in terms of terms, workspaces versus projects, but they are actually very, very distinct, different things. Think of the workspace as like a binder. It's got a whole bunch of different stuff in it. It's your top level in holder, or actually better yet, think of a filing cabinet, and within there are a set of binders. The filing cabinet is the workspace. All of your content that will be used is in that high level. And it's really just think of it as a directory system to kind of hold all those pieces together, both configuration information, but also information that's related to your specific implementation, files and other XBasic and all these pieces here. Within a workspace, you will have one or more projects. So think of those as binders that are in a file cabinet. So you're going to create the workspace, and the moment you create the workspace, Alpha is going to automatically create that first binder, that first project. And you work at the project level. There are elements at the workspace level, but you really, most of your content will be at the project level, and that's kind of where the focus on there. And we're going to talk a little bit about what's what in terms of different levels and where they're at from there. So the workspace is that top level piece. And there are a couple things I do whenever I set up a new workspace. I'm going to walk you through those, show you a few little elements there that help me out in terms of my process from there. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and just do a quick demonstration of creating a new workspace. So I'm here. Let's go ahead and go into Alpha. I'm already in Alpha with an existing one, but I can go up here to File and create a new workspace here. Also, if you log in, let's go ahead and let's go ahead and quit out and show you, so I could start the process here. It'll show me this information here. Or let's go ahead and exit out and get back in to Alpha. And when you launch, it's going to bring up basically the welcome screen, only a few moments away. Alpha over Alpha over Alpha. Okay. So here, we're in our select workspace. And since I already have existing workspaces, I can go into those. But you'll notice also we have a create a new empty workspace. So either way it's basically two ways to get to the same destination. And so I'm going to click here, create a new empty workspace. I'm going to click OK. And then it brings up my create new workspace. Now, I'm going to give this, I'll call it webinar workspace. You should obviously give it something that is about your project. Think of it as the high level filing cabinet. So if you're going to have a number of different projects within it, you may want to have a different naming structure, like a client name or something along those lines. You're given here where you have a location and a little button called create workspace directory. So if I click browse here, I can kind of select and say, where do I want to put my workspace? If I enable create workspace directory, which is the default, it actually creates a folder to hold all this in. And so I always just leave that alone. I give it a workspace name. I tell it kind of where I want my workspace folder to be at, and then in terms of the root of where that's at, and then I let it create the directory. So let's go ahead and click OK here. And in a moment, it has created my workspace directory. So it's created a set of stuff. And in fact, let's go look at that real quick as it is, just to get a feel for what it does. Now, as I mentioned before I go into that real quick, we have already created both a workspace and an initial project. So that's been done automatically for me. So let's go check that out. So I'm going to click here. I'm at my workspace control panel. By the way, I'm going to show you if your control panel is not, if it's this one and not this one, there's a way to set it so it defaults to go to the web project control panel, which is where you're going to want to be. And in fact, in the community edition, I don't even think the availability of the control panel is there. I apologize. I'm using the full edition, not the community edition, but that is an element that I like to show people about. So I'm going to click this little folder icon right here. And what this does is basically opens up the project folder. You'll notice I'm already in a project here. Let me scoot this over to the right. And you'll see that I have a project here called default that they created for me when I created the workspace. So you'll see I'm in this default web project. If I click one level up, you'll see here is my project folder. And we'll come back to this when we create another project. We're gonna actually create a couple more projects and come in and look at it here. But now I'm gonna go all the way up to Alpha V12. So remember when I created this, I gave this directory, users, administrator, documents, alphaware v12 is kind of the root directory. And then I told it I wanted it to create a workspace directory for me. So you'll notice if I go down here to the bottom, you'll see that it created a folder called Webinar Workspace, which is two things. One, it's the name of this folder, but it's also the name of my workspace, which is a file within it. So I'm going to go ahead and go back into this Webinar Workspace. And now you'll notice I'm at the root of my workspace. And you'll see here's a file called an ADB file, which is webinar_workspace. So this is the master file. Basically, this is what you click on to launch. That's what, when you say open a workspace, it will tell you to do that, and it will allow you to do that from there. Actually, I need to adjust my mic. I'm getting some feedback here. I'm going to put you on hold for 1 second. Is that okay, everybody? And then I'll be back in
right
about
here.
1 minute. I just want it to be super high quality, so bear with me. So the webinar workspace is a file, and this file is sort of like a directory file. It kind of knows where everything is. So when you open it up inside of Alpha, it knows how to build this representation within the environment to show what's available, the different projects and files and things like that. You also notice in here, it's created a subfolder called webinar workspace.web projects. So any projects that you create are going to be put in there. And we have our first project, which is default web project. Go in there, nothing in there yet. So let's go back in here. I'm back into the environment, and I'm going to go ahead and click new here. Let's go ahead and go create a new web page. So it opens up, in this case, my web page. I can go, hello world. I'll save this. And now it's saved it. You'll see it now in my web control panel, because the workspace is tracking this information and presents it. And you'll notice it's under the A5W pages area. Now, if I go back into my directory, you'll notice that the actual location of that file is in the subfolder web projects, default web projects. So it's going to store any files that I create for this particular project, in this case called default, in that particular folder. So that's where, if I click this little button here, it takes me directly to the folder where it stores everything in this project from that standpoint. I just click here, boom, I'm right there where it's at. So again, the important thing I want to get across is that the workspace is not the folder. The workspace is actually that file right there that's created with the name. When I created it, it created this folder for me just for convenience. Otherwise, if I had said don't, it would have just taken all of these files here and put it at that root directory. That, remember, it had that little checkbox that goes from there. So the neat thing about that is that if you ever need to get to the files, you kind of know where to go. And so you can go copy and paste files and do stuff. You can actually do that within the environment with the add file capability to add things. But often it's easier just to say, you know what, I want to get a copy of that. So I go here. I can then just, copy this, move it somewhere else, do anything I want to do from that standpoint there. So super important. You have a workspace, which is like the filing cabinet. And then you have projects, which are the sort of sub area from, or sort of the specific elements. Now, the question I always get is, well, why do you need projects? I mean, I'm not sure. And there are different reasons. One, and if you've ever seen a demo with Selwyn, is that the nice thing about projects, it allows you to kind of segment your files. So you may, like, for instance, when I do a lot of demos and things like that, I'll have like 10 or 20 projects in there, because each of those projects may be involving in a certain demo. And thus, I want to only show the files there. Otherwise, these things get really, really big very, very quickly, meaning you could have hundreds of files in here. Another key thing that's very important about projects is that when you're dealing with web components, they have to be at the root of the project, meaning that when you create a component and save it, it literally needs to be right here. You cannot create a subfolder and store it there and then put your UXs in there. So there's certain limitations at the project level in terms of how you can organize files, and thus the project kind of gets around it. Now, there's a couple other reasons you like projects, and I'll show you that in a few moments, because it also helps in terms of deployment and other pieces. Often I'll see some things in regards to, let's say I have a larger engagement, and that engagement is going to have a set of APIs that are built with Alpha, and that's going to run on one server. And then I'm going to have a front end that's going to run on another server, and then maybe I'm going to have a mobile. What I could use is use projects to segment my overall work into those areas. So I could have one project that's focused on my API backend. I could have another project that's focused on my user interface, and then another project that does mobile pieces there. And the reality is they're probably not sharing a lot from a standpoint of controls, so I can kind of segment them into those different areas. If other people have ideas of how they've used projects, please go ahead and put them in and let us know, because we'd like to share with the rest of the crew that are on today on what these pieces go from there. Now, let's say I've started this project, I've got this, and I go, you know what, I need to do a new project. So that's done very, very simply within the system. You'll see in the left-hand corner, this tells me what project I'm within. So if I click the drop-down, I'll see I only have one folder here called default. Now I'm going to go up here to File, and then you'll see there is an element called New Project and Delete Project. Be careful on Delete Project. It does delete it, and so you got to be a little careful on that. But I'm going to go ahead and click New Project, because what I want to do is to this workspace, my filing cabinet, I want to add a new project. So let's go ahead and do that. And we'll just call this New Project. And I'm going to call this, and I'm going to do simple. I'm going to start with a new empty project. So I'm going to call it API Backend, because I'm going to put all my API stuff that I do from here. I'm going to come back and look at these other selections in a few moments, but I'm now going to click OK. So now I'm in my other project. So you'll see a couple things have occurred. One is it actually points me in my workspace. I'm now pointed at that directory or that project called API Backend. And you'll see I have now 2 items here that are available in terms of projects. Now remember, when I click this little button or this little icon right here for the folder, it's going to take me directly into that folder for that project. So I'm going to click here, and you'll notice that now I am in the API. First and foremost, you'll notice, hey, wait a minute, where's that HTML file? Well, that file is not part of this project, so you are not seeing here. This is basically an empty one. But if I go into my screen and I go over here, you'll see, and let me drag this over here so you can kind of see both of them at the same time. This is my API backend web project, empty. Here's my default web project, and it has that file in it. So again, this way you can segment the different groups of files in the file directories, and Alpha takes care of all that. When you're in here and you create new files, like let's go ahead and create this as like, API, let's call it API help. And then I'm going to save that as API _ help. I click OK. I don't have to worry about where it goes, because Alpha goes, oh, you're in the API backend web project. Well, here's the folder I'm going to put that in. And you'll notice it put it in this folder. And this folder is identical because, again, we're ignoring that for right now. We're in this project here. If I switch back to the other project, you'll see that I immediately see the files that are in that project, and then I can navigate from there. So really, projects do a couple different things, and we'll explain a little bit more. There's a set of settings that go with a project, but also it places things at different locations on your hard drive for management and simplicity. So if you ever have to like copy parts of your project, you don't have to go and pull out only the pieces that are involved in one aspect. It gives you a way of organizing those things from there. So let's go ahead and do a couple other things. First, I want to talk a little bit about what is in a project. So first and foremost, let me go back here. Again, projects segmented allows you to break them into larger projects, into smaller ones. It's really nice to set up like experimental locations. So if you want to make a copy and do some stuff and you don't want to worry about backing it out of your original project, you could set up like a scratch project. And you'll see that happens a lot in different environments where you have kind of scratch files that you kind of want to have within the system and use what's going on, but don't necessarily want to pollute one of your projects from there. And we're going to show in a minute, you can set them up from Git repositories. Now, very important, at the workspace level, we create connection strings, things like alpha DAO and storage connection strings. Those are shared, those are at the file cabinet level, those are shared with everything below it. So let's go ahead and show you what that looks like. So I'm in this case, I'm in my default project, doesn't matter where I'm at. I'm going to go up to here to tools, and I'm going to select alpha DAO connection string, because I want to create a connection string. Okay. I don't have one in my project, so I'm going to go ahead and create one, but but I'm going to cheat. I'm going to use Alpha's built-in connection string builder to do that. So I'm going to click create AA demo Northwind demo connection string. Okay, create my string. Yeah, make a clean copy. Okay, boom. I now have my connection string ready to go. So I close it. So when I'm in my project, in this case, I'm in the default project and I go to tools, Alpha DO connection strings, I see my connection string there. Now, also, if I were to do a storage connection string, same concept. Go through the process, set it up, all good from there. Same thing with SQL Server reporting services, connection strings, and named providers, those kind of things there. Now, let's go over into my API backend. Okay, now remember, our files are different, so it's showing different files in there. Well, let's go look at tools Alpha DAO connection strings. Interesting. It has that connection string that I created for my other project. So connection strings are shared among projects, and that's very important for you to understand, because if you change it, if you think, oh, I'm going to have a connection string and it's going to point to here, and then I go to another project and I'm going to edit it so they have different connection strings with the same name, it's not going to work. These are connection string is a concept that's at the workspace level, the file cabinet level, and all binders or projects below it share that information, which is kind of good because often your projects are associated with a different set of, like you have an API backend hitting a database, you have a front end maybe hitting a database, so those elements are there. If you do need to have a different set of connection strings, you're going to have to create different workspaces or use something like a dynamic connection string, and then within your projects, manage it from that standpoint. But again, very important, I want to get across that connection strings are managed at the workspace level, not at the project level, and all projects share that. Now, that's not true for everything. So let's go ahead and go into profiles here. And so let's go back to my default here, and I'm going to click here for profiles. Now, what profiles are my profiles? Specifically, these are my publishing profiles. These mean when I'm publishing it, this is where I go to tell Alpha how to move all my files from my development environment to a new location, and most importantly, reconfigure things like connection strings, etc., so it operates correctly in that area, in that arena, or that new target destination. So for instance, I'm going to go in here and I'm going to say, when I'm using this project default, my target folder, and this is for local publishing, is called webinar workspace. So I just want, when I publish it, it's going to publish it locally to that directory there. And I've set up that publishing profile from there. Now, let's go ahead and let's go into my other API backend. Now that I'm over there, again, it's showing me the files from that directory. Let's look at my profiles. So you'll notice it already had a local web root because it automatically generates that for you. But notice something very important. When I look at target folder, it's empty. And the reason why is that publishing profiles are managed at the project level, not the workspace. So publishing profiles are not shared among your different projects. And that's important because often a project will have a different destination than the each of the projects will have it. Like, so my API backend is going to maybe go to a Alpha Cloud deployment that I want to manage my APIs there. And then maybe my front end goes to a different Alpha Cloud deployment. And so by allowing you to manage your profiles at the project level gives you an enormous amount of flexibility to be able to say, okay, here's my different things I'm doing. This is where they go when it's all set to go. And so you manage it there. So the connection strings are at the top level, the profiles are here. Now, remember, the connection strings are the same for all the projects in the development environment, but do remember when you set up a publishing profile, you can modify that. So there are a lot of flexibility in terms of how you can then, within your publishing profiles, within a project, you can kind of pick and choose where you actually, or what your connection strings will be when they're running on that destination environment. So that's a little bit behind there. So I want to go back to my little thing here. So connection strings are done at the workspace level, but things like publishing profiles, project properties, and web security is all defined at the project level. So if I go in here and I go here to, I don't want to go publish, I want to go to project properties. This will be set up for this particular project. Obviously, they call it project properties, so that makes sense. And then also when you go to the web security, you're going to set up your security here. A little nuance on that is that if you are like you're setting up a key in your security in your database, make sure that you set the key the same in your web security for both of your projects. Otherwise, one project will go, oh, I can read that password fine. But if you don't have the same encryption key that you set up during the web security configuration, then the other project may go, oh, I can't get that password, I can't decode it kind of scenario. So there's a few little nuances you gotta be a little careful of, but to a large degree, the project web security and properties and all that is managed along with the profiles at the project level. And within it, it holds that information. So the information, so you can have that flexibility within it. So back to this real quick. Connection strings at the top level, publishing profiles, project properties, and web security are at the project level. Now I'll just give you a guide when you set that up and start using more than one there. Now I'm going to jump back into the Git stuff in a moment, but also there's a really, really, really powerful feature built in called cloning, Workspace Cloning. And that Workspace Cloning is really nice. It does two key things. So let's say I had a great project, everything went well, and I really liked that project. And I'm going to go do, a whole workspace. I use project, maybe let's call it engagement. And everything really went really well. And I'm starting a new one, and I go, there's a lot of content in there that I already have. So I'd like to reuse all that. I don't want to have to recreate all my UXs and HTMLs and everything else that are needed, A5W pages. Well, if you go in here and you go to File, and again, I'm at the Workspace control panel, I go to File, there is a feature in here called Clone Workspace. Click here, you'll see that this looks almost identical to the new Workspace dialog. Basically, it gives you an ability to give it a name, a location to put it in. Do you want it to wrap it in a folder or not? You can also say clear existing files in target folder, and that's kind of nice if you're trying to overwrite another project or do something along those lines. So I can go in here and let's call this Webinar Workspace 2. I'm going to put it in the same general location, have it create the workspace directory, and I click OK. Now, very important, I'm going to go ahead and say yes. Okay, so you'll notice this one opened up in my old control panel. We'll go there. So you'll notice I'm in my new workspace, Webinar Workspace 2. You'll notice that that's displayed at the top here so I can see what it is from that standpoint. And everything I've done before is cloned. So all my connection strings, all of my files, everything, even I've got 2 projects, all that is preserved when I clone a workspace. And what's nice too is that a long time ago, and I think it was Steve Wood at IADN, before when you had to clone a workspace, you basically had to make a copy on the drive and then run a bat file or something like that. And then the team added this functionality because when you'll notice that, for instance, the file directories have a certain name. All these secondary files, this file, the workspace there. So that was kind of a big pain. There was a lot of things you had to do. A while back, the team added this clone workspace. So now it's just click, click, new name, everything's good, ready to go. And then I can go back and forth. I can just go up here to, my webinar workspace, good to go there. Or I can go back to my webinar, 2 and go there. And essentially they're clones, but they are now in separate directories and separate workspaces. So when I start changing things, it will only change the things in that workspace. So it gives me, think of it, I use it kind of as a template capability to start things out from that standpoint. So that's a really powerful feature. You just go to File, Clone Workspace. Where is it? Where did it go? Oh, wait, File. There we are. It's right up top from that standpoint here. Now, there are also some other nice tools in here, but I want to focus on another thing. Let's say everything's going great. And then I was on an amazing webinar with Sarah, and Sarah was talking about a new security function or capability. It's like, oh man, I want to try that out. So think of this as almost like an experimental step. So I want to be able to use that information. So I could go and I'll look it up. You'll notice now that Alpha has a GitHub repository. So I'm going to actually put that into the chat window, but you'll see that we are Alpha is now starting to put all of their demonstrations and other things like that onto GitHub. And so we'll check this one out. Let's check this one, online security admin. Let's go ahead and click on that. So you can see this was a online security admin little demonstration, and it included, a component. It includes some SVG files, etc. from here. Now, traditionally, what I would do is I would email Alpha and say, can you send it to me? They send it to me in zip. I unzip it, do everything manually. It's a big pain in the tail. Now what I can do, which is a little better, is I can just go right here and say code download zip, and this will download a zip of these files. I'm still responsible for creating a project, copying them into there and doing all those elements there, but it allows you to do download zips. That's kind of nice. You don't have to bother anybody. The demonstrations will be on the GitHub repository. But there's another cool feature that was added into Alpha when they introduced the integration with GitHub and the following. So I'm going to go back to Alpha, and I'm going to say, you know what, I kind of want to experiment with this, but I don't want to put all these files in any of this. So I want to create a new project. So I'm going to go here to File. I'm going to select New Project like I did before. Remember, I could say, experiment or what you want to do from here. But you'll notice up top, there's another selection that's available. It's called Create Project from GitHub Repository. Intriguing. Let's try that. So I click there, and you'll notice that I now have the ability to say, first, I'm going to give it a name. So let's call it experiment because I'm doing some experiment. It's asking me for a URL. Where do I get that? Well, you go back to here and notice this little code button right here. You click on it. You'll see that that is the URL where on GitHub this information is at. So I can just click here on this little copy button, and I've copied this URL here. So I'm going to go back to Alpha. I'm going to paste that in there. Now, the Alpha ones have no security. Basically, they're public repositories because we want to share this code. We want it available. Other people may have this where they have a repository and they want to share it with you also, which is awesome, and we encourage that. But if in case that for whatever reason that GitHub repository is secure, you can put in a username and password here, and it will talk to GitHub and say, okay, this is who I am. Here's my credentials. Please give me your information. So it works not only with public repositories, but also private password protected repositories. I won't go into it now, but in order for you to access that, whoever owns the repository usually has to add you as contributors so that you can get access to it, because that's how their security system works there. But long story short, I've copied the location of that. I've given it a project name in there, and I click OK. In a few moments, it has done actually two things. One is that it has copied those files down to my local system, but it's also created a repository for me. Notice here, it's showing me a repository setting. So let me go to all files, and you'll see, admin S3 or 3S, group SVG. That looks awful like the files that were in here. And if there's subfolders and everything else, all that would have been created for you. But what's really nice too is that actually, let's go ahead and open this up. Behind the scenes, and I've got I'm able to see hidden things. It actually created a repository on my local machine with the history of this and all that information here. So it's doing double duty. It's actually creating my project, or really downloading the files for me in a structure that's ready to go. So I saved a lot of time. I can just start working with that project right away. I don't have to go unzip and create a folder and copy and do all that stuff. But also behind the scenes, it has added the Git repository folder and set up a repository. So if I go into here, and let's say I make a modification, yada, 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 I save it, and let's go ahead and close that. You'll notice now that Alpha is tracking using Git the fact that this item has been changed, modified. And so now if I go ahead and I can refresh this, I can say my commitment. Now I'm doing this to my local repository. I'm not pushing this back up to Alphas because I just wanted to bring down that. So I'll say first change, and I'll click commit. Oh, I gotta select the one to commit actually, that might help. Okay. And now it's telling me boom, boom, boom. Now my change has been in there. So now in my repository, I have the original version that came down from alpha, but also this new version here. And I highly recommend, if you haven't spent time with Git and using it for source control, definitely spend some time working with it. It's saved my tails many times recently where I'm disciplined about when I make a bunch of changes, I'll check them in. And then if I really screw things up, I have a good history behind the scenes. Alpha still does the backup thing for me, but sometimes it's easy to have checkpoints and Git repositories. So if anything goes really, really bad, I can restore it from there. So the idea is now I have my 3 projects. They're in 3 different folder locations. In the case of experiment, not only do I have those files in a different folder, I also have within there a Git repository. So it's tracking everything and helping me do all those pieces here. And that is the key there. So it's really nice. Projects are really handy for you to structure things. Now with the integration with GitHub, it makes it even easier to share projects with different people. You can put up your own GitHub repository, give someone a URL and permissions, and they can download it. That saves them a lot of unzip time and other things like that. And also you can share things between repositories, which is really handy from there. So that's cloning. And then we've already talked about, where do we do? Yeah, we talked about that there. So that is kind of a quick overview of Workspaces. Again, Workspaces are the filing cabinet. Projects are the binders within there. It allows you to segment and control your development environment, kind of break things into smaller chunks. We've kind of walked on where the file locations are and what the different files are. And we've talked about cloning and also creating projects from Git repositories, which, trust me, once you do that, you'll never go back. It's just so simple to say, oh, there's a cool demo that Alpha put up on the server, boom, 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 off to the races and you're done. It's really, really cool. And then cloning, I use when I want to set up a new project and I want to kind of leverage something I already have. I can do a clone, everything looks good. I open up that new project, I just tweak my connection strings and other things, delete the things I don't want, and I am in business. So that is Workspaces. And now I'd like to go ahead and open that up to questions, or if there's no questions on that, any other questions that may have?
Excellent. I do not see questions, I think, which means that you
It
were
was
very clear in this
crystal
one.
clear.
Crystal clear, exactly. But I
Yeah,
do
I mean,
have
it's fairly basic stuff, but I hope
yeah,
it gives you a little more feel for how this stuff works.
yeah, no, that's terrific. Thanks very much. All right, so our first non-workspace question is, actually, there are 2 of them. So let's start with this one. I have a field in a list detail view that is for the telephone number, and the component and so the component, it's a character field, and in my SQL database, it's also defined as a character field. What they'd like to do, though, is have a client-side mask, just for aesthetics. Maybe it puts dashes in between or parentheses around, but I don't want to store those non-numeric characters back in the SQL database. So I want to, so can you show us how to do that?
And again, you're using a list control or using in-place editing, or
Let's choose, it's a field in a list detail view. So it's a field.
okay.
Yep.
Okay, so let's see if we can create that real quick since we've already got this set up. So I'm going to go ahead and create a UX because lists live in UXs. They aren't versus grids, who are kind of standalone. We go to controls, create a list, go list customers. Okay, I'm going to use the quick setup journey to go to Northwind, select the customers table. And let's just add like that, and then phone. Okay, now I do want to create a detail view for me, and then I'll leave the rest the same. So it's just going to take this. Okay, and I'll save this as customer. Now, since we're on the other topic real quickly, is just remember, I now have a UX in there. If I go to my folder, you'll see that you notice it's starting to create a whole bunch of other stuff inside my default web project. It's got the component, it's got some junk files like manifest that he uses there, but also now it's saved my project settings and project properties and stuff like that. That is all related to this project right here. If I go in here, you'll notice all that stuff's not there. Maybe last selected profile and settings. These are things it's tracking when you're in that project and using it from there. Okay, so let's go back here, back to the question, the customer UX. So let's go ahead and show this. Okay, so I can click here and you can see it's all wired everything up. I can edit it. Let's actually make this compact style. So I'm going to select, you know, I do blue gray all the time. Let's do coffee for giggles. Right. Let's do, yeah, let's go this. Okay, save that. Always save often. And then go in there. And now we're in a, I created compact, so it should be a little easier to see everything. Okay, so you can see that from that standpoint there. So I can change them out there. So you'll notice in phone here, and if I type it in, there's no masking or anything like that, etc. So let's go ahead and look at that. So if you'll notice, what we did is we created a list of customers and then a phone. And the phone is a text field on the screen. So I'm going to go down in here and I can control the behaviors of that over here. So for instance, we can have watermarks. So it puts in what, like if you wanted to guide them saying how you wanted to do the information, you could do that. But I believe in here, there's display format, but where is my masking? Actually, I'll click here and go mask. Yes. Oh, that's time picker properties. Character. We had in control. They would set it on there. Oh, okay. Yeah, has mask. Oh, that's time picker. Client-side formatting. Yeah, okay. So you'll notice client-side properties, there's something called client-side formatting. And if you read the help here, it says specify if the text box has client-side formatting, such as a mask or a custom display format. So I'm going to say yes. And I have a mask here, and I'm going to go to format definition. And now I can put in a mask. So I'm going to put in US phone number. So let me go through that a little slower. I have my field here. I'm going to put in mask, and then I'm going to select here that it's simple. I can create it myself, and I do want to show the mask characters. I'm going to select the US phone number and click OK. So now there's a question. I'll have to check on this. So the mask is the input level. So let's try that here. So let's go here, and I've got my phone number, and I'll go 888-111-222. Now notice that it's automatically being nice and doing all that nice formatting from there. But let's check it out. When I save it, you'll notice that it is including the values. So if I go back in here, we've saved that one. Oh, I might have to synchronize when I save. I don't think I've set it up there. Yeah, let's just go do that real quick. Go ahead and 888-111-2222. Save it and synchronize it. Okay, so, and if I go back out and back in, you'll notice in this case, it did all the formatting and masking correctly, but it did store those things there. So what we can now do is there's really no feature in the format or format type. It does that and kind of there. But in the list of customers, if we go and we go to the fields and go to the phone here, let's see, I believe you can modify it here where you could write a little piece of script to strip out the information. So no decode value, no, have to double check. This is kind of where I get a little fuzzy. I know I can set up my mask, but now, let's see, field name, show hide, compute control, compute summary. On detail view, that would allow you to modify it there. Okay, here you go. Okay, it says you can use this event to transform data from the detail view before the list is updated. Your JavaScript, so in here, what I can do is I can actually, strip out. So I can basically, I don't have the JavaScript right now, but I can write a little JavaScript that says remove blank spaces, remove dashes, remove left or right characters, sort of a rim special kind of thing. And so then actually before the list is updated, it would be, you would strip that out so the actual number that's stored would have none of the formatting characters with it. And again, where I got that to is here on the on list update. And basically you have to put in, some stuff to, do some modifications. And then you say return modified field. And you can call it anything you want. It's from your script. You just have to make sure to say return and then the value after it's been transformed, and then you're good to go. And in here in this script, you can refer to the data value so you know what the one is that was on the user interface, and then you can do it before you compress it to there. And so that's how you would use that. Yes, I'm going to exit without it. So first and foremost, I set up the mask on the actual field itself to handle all the formatting and all that nice stuff there. And then I need to go into my list builder, go to fields to the field, and then use the on list update to strip out the characters I don't want before they're saved to the database. And then that allows you to make sure that in case that, so that it's kind of a twofold, and then you can achieve that when you want to do the development of that kind of feature in terms of nice formatting when they input it, but saving in the database in a format that is probably better for searching and how it handles it. The only thing you got to get into is, do you have international situations? Because they're going to have a little different formatting. It gets a little hairy at times, but that's the basic concept.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I won't ask you the follow-up question, which is, could you show us how to do that now with a conditional mask based on country? Because we have a couple other things to get to, but it's a great question. And actually, I think I would love to tackle it in a.
The trick is, how would you know what company? So usually what that is, and the way we handle that is like when the person logs in, they can set what country they're in. I think you can read it from the browser, but often you'll notice most systems, you want an explicit.
Sure, but maybe if it was in the same record, though, for example, this customer one may have a country field associated with it.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'd have to think about that a little bit more. I mean, that's a great question, and it's important for internationalization purposes. What I would probably do is I'd have some kind of hidden field that told me what the country code should be, and then I would maybe have, I don't know. The trick is the formatting is done at the mass level here. Right. Now, if you are not scared of JavaScript, you can use the on key up, put in your own script to actually, while they generate it, update, format it there. Then the cool thing is when you're typing it in, you could look at a hidden field and say, oh, they want European structure. This is how I should do the masking. So, that's kind of, it's much more JavaScript intensive, but you can do that. You're just basically saying each key that comes up, I say, oh, I'm at key number 4 and I'm in US. So I'm going to put out on the screen my brackets and a space, and then the next thing they type will be in the right location, look right. The other option you may have is that, I don't know, I guess you could create 2 different forms if you wanted to use the masking for 2 different, but I'm not sure. That's a tough one. That's a little more complicated on how you do those pieces.
Terrific. Let's see what else we've got here. Okay. So this is a question about the switch year. And so, in other words, it's the setting in Alpha Anywhere that lets you know when you've specified a 2-digit date, whether you're talking about 1900 or 2000. Do you know where you set that up and kind of how that works?
I know that when you have a field, so let's just take contact name. I'm going to say that's a date field. Okay, when you're there are a set of date time picker options that allow you when is there a picker, etc.
Yeah, and the picker, I guess, can force it to the right year. I guess it's just in fields where they're allowed to type in
yes, like
the year, they type in a 2-digit year instead of a 4.
Gotcha. And that's where what I would do is I would use a client-side formatting and use, first I would use a watermark to tell them how I want to input the information. So if I go to, I think it's up here, up top, first I can say watermark and say, 2, 0, or 2, 0, or like XXXX or whatever, to give them a visual guide. So that'd be step number 1, to give them a watermark to let them know what you expect. Step number 2 is you can actually put in a mask and format to have 4, like I can go in here and say it's, let's see, it's 1, 2, 3, 4. And then, so I don't think that's one of the pre. So then that way the system's kind of guiding them through that. Oh, you can't put a letter in there, so you prevent them from accidentally putting in a letter, but you allow them to kind of, I'm giving them little hints to do that. And then last but not least, you can also do validation on this field. So if I go in, I can bump back and say if it's not right, I'm not going to save it. So there's some validation. And so you can go up here, and I'm going to go scroll up to the top. I can say validation JavaScript. I can just basically write a little piece thing saying if it's not 4 digits, then don't allow it. It has to be 4 digits or I won't let you go. And you could even say, well, the 4 digits have to be within this date range. Otherwise, like if they put in 1800, that probably wouldn't be good. Oh, who knows? But so you can use a combination of those 3 elements to make sure when they put their information in
I'm
there.
just getting word that Sarah also has an answer to this question.
Oh, cool. Sarah, tell me more.
Should we? Oh, that's all right. Sarah, welcome.
Hi. Yeah, so I read the question, and the question is, can you explain what the switch year is? And Dave summed it up pretty good. It's the year at which a 2-digit date year is interpreted as either being in the 2000s or 1900s. And there are 2 places you can set that in your web projects. You can set it on individual components in the properties. There's a setting in there called switch year. You can also set it in the web projects control panel in your web project properties. I believe right now it defaults to a value of 30, meaning if the user enters 30 or lower, then the date is presumed to be in the 2000s, and if it's above that value, it's in 1900s. So I have a documentation link here I can send to people.
Oh, thank you.
But yeah, so that's what the switch year is. It's a little bit of a holdover from software in its early days when data storage space was at a premium. So storing 2 digits for a year would save you a lot more space than storing 4. In general, though, if you can avoid it, we do encourage people to capture 4-digit years, just so that when 2030 comes around and you forgot to change your switch year again, you're not bit by customers asking you why everything is showing up as 1931. But let me pull that up for you here real quick.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I appreciate that.
Awesome. Someone said the Y2K bug. Oh yeah, someone pointed out though that you could go with 5-digit years so that you'd be safe from the Y10K bug, which
yeah,
that's good.
Sure.
It's like I plan on living. I plan on living forever. So far, so good.
So far, so good. Exactly.
So far, so good.
Yeah.
Cool.
Let's see what I've got here. Oh, here's an interesting question. Can you use the server, either the classic or the IIS servers, to automatically sync an S3 bucket to a local drive?
Yes, absolutely. And the way I've done that before is I create an A5W page like here. Okay. And then I'm going to go in here and I'm going to put in my XBasic, and I'll sit there and say, here is my cool code to call S3 and bring stuff down. Click OK. And then, I'd put in the code in here, I'd save it, and then I can then just use a curl command in the Windows scheduler or task manager to call this page periodically, and it will just run the code on there. So it's pretty straightforward. I mean, it's there are certain limitations. I mean, this page will only run for a certain amount of time before the browser kills it. So you have to be a little careful that, you may want to chunk it into smaller stuff, but I've used that technique. Another technique I've used is to call this page to say, read an API, grab some data, put it into a database or vice versa. And I just call that page every once in a while and it runs this there. Now, what you may want to explore, which is a better way to go, is A5W pages are nice and easy. I kind of like them. They work well. But you could also go in and create your own web service, which is just basically an API endpoint that could do the same thing. And you call that API endpoint versus calling an A5W page. It's really essentially the same thing, but the API endpoint gives you a lot more capabilities from there.
So if Amazon S3 had a webhook that fired, say, when you put a new file up,
yes,
I don't know if it has that capability, but if it does, it could then very well say, oh, a new file was loaded. I'm going to tell the API that a new file is there, so it knows to get it at the same time.
In fact, I actually have that set up somewhere. Is basically I have an S3 hook that when a new file is created, it actually calls an alpha server web page. It gives it the payload, which says, here's the file, here's the location on S3, here's some other information about it, and then I pull it down to the local system. So therefore, I don't have to periodically do anything. The moment something hits S3, it's calling that A5W page. And that's how I set it up from there. Now, reality is there's also third-party products that do S3 sync, but I was able to pull this off. We needed this kind of add-on. Actually, we tried a lot of sync stuff. And if you have a massive file set, sync stuff is hard because it gets slow. And so it actually worked out really well.
Cool. Oh, that's good to know. Thanks. All right, looking through here, we do have a couple of questions that we are not going to be able to get to.
I know. That's why you got to send them to guides@alphasoftware.com.
Do send them to guides@alphasoftware.com.
Yes.
Absolutely. That's what I was going to say. We will be happy to go and take a look at them. So Dion, thanks very much for presenting.
Thank you. Fun time.
Thank you very much for helping out and answering questions. And thanks to all of you who showed up and kept our session lively. We hope to see you at our next Wednesday webinar. Till then, take care and stay well. Bye-bye.